Hey, I'm Joe Madureira. I'm the creative director at Airship Syndicate.
So talk about what your inspiration was. I understand this came off of a comic book you had created back in the 90s.
I did. I had just finished my run on Uncanny X-Men. I worked at Marvel for a lot of years, and I went into creator-owned comic market. I decided to do a fantasy series, which at that time was not something that was like very common, but I was playing a lot of Japanese RPGs and watching a lot of anime and stuff, and so the fantasy that they featured in their books and their anime was like so different than what we had in the US. Like Conan was like the only comic in the US that like was like the fantasy book. So it was pretty different, and it caught on. It had like a very superhero comic flavor to it. And then I got into the game industry, so I never finished the book. But it's really cool now to be doing like a video game based on that comic that was based on all the Japanese games that I was playing at the time. So
Did that also lead into the turn-based gameplay aspect of this?
it did. I mean, you know, we wanted to focus on a game. We have a very small team, so we really thought hard about what kind of game we could do really well, and we were big fans of JRPGs, and we thought, like, you know, we could do a game like this. If it's turn-based, we could do a really good game, and not a lot of Western studios are doing games like this, so we felt like there was hopefully a market for it, and even if there isn't, whatever, we had a lot of fun working on the game. So
Talk about the storyline for those who haven't played the game yet.
So in this story, like there's a band of adventurers, and they are looking for the mana is sort of like, you know, the magic in the world that they inhabit, and so it's been like diminishing, and so they're looking for mana sources, and they come to this mysterious island looking for it, and they get shot down by pirates, and they're sort of like trapped and trying to find their way off the island, and in doing so they uncover some bad things that are going down there. It involves vampires and undead, and it's really cool. In the comic, I didn't really get to touch on a lot of like like D&D was a huge influence for me too, and so like I always wanted, like, one of my dreams was to like work on like all the monsters that were in the monster manual and stuff, and I didn't really get to touch on that stuff in the comic series, and so the game is kind of like where I get to like have fun and like design like monsters, and so like a lot of the game, it's really just an excuse to kill really cool looking creatures. It's a dungeon crawler, you know, rinse and repeat. You go back to town, level up, kill cool looking creatures, get new gear, do it again.
And you can also fish.
Okay, fish. So the fishing mini game is funny because we knew we had to get it in there because it was like a Kickstarter backer stretch goal to do a mini game, and we did the fishing game, and it ended up being like way more fun than we anticipated. So we've been like kind of building onto it, and hopefully by the time the game's out, we'll have like I've seen people like doing that and nothing else. So it's like caught on quite a bit. Yeah.
Can you talk about the depth of this game?
Yeah. So the game is meant to be played and replayed multiple times. The dungeons are randomly generated. Events on the world map are randomly generated. So there'll be creature encounters, loot on the world map that spawns like at different times of the day. When you go into the dungeon, the dungeon set itself may be made out of 30 or 40 rooms, but it'll only spawn like five or eight of them when you go into it. So each time you do it, there's going to be a lot of new content, and then within each room there are different events that can trigger. So you'll have, you know, the last time you went, there might have been like a really cool puzzle. This time there's like a treasure chest or a couple of enemies. So each time you do it, there's going to be a lot of new surprises. So it's really built around replayability and just leveling up your characters and You can do each dungeon on multiple difficulties. It increases the loot rewards and the difficulty as well. So we hope like people will play the game multiple times through.
What's it been like for you to have a small team? I believe you said it's about 11 people after the massive teams you had with Darksiders games.
It's really cool. I mean, it's a totally different feel. It's kind of like hanging out with your friends in a little clubhouse and just having fun like every day. It really is pretty cool. You know, after Darksiders, I felt personally I didn't really want to work in a huge studio again. I didn't want to do games anymore unless it was like this. And luckily, because of both mobile, you know, the success of mobile games and like indie studios actually making games that are very, very successful with like 3 or 4 people, there is still an opportunity for a small studio to, you know, find success and be able to keep making games like this. And so we felt like, man, like we have to try. 11's actually considered a big team, you know, for an indie studio, but we do have like pretty high, because we were on AAA games before, we have pretty high production values, so we try to still adhere to those. But hopefully people like what they're playing there.
Will there be some kind of an actual comic book now that you're doing the game?
Yes. So as part of the launch of the game, I've committed to doing at least three new issues of the comic book series, which people may remember from way, way back in the day. But you don't have to have any knowledge of the comic series to enjoy the game. So.